Pop Shield, a long-form discussion podcast about musical topics both past and present. I'm Gabe, and I'm joined as always by Dan.
Hello.
And Darren.
Hello.
1999, the trailblazing double LP that made Prince a star back in 1982, has finally gotten the super-deluxe-edition treatment, and pretty much every music publication is now raving about the 2 full discs of rare and unreleased material from the legendary Prince vault, as well as the very first remaster of the landmark album itself. We're going to spend a little time talking about this new box set today, but we really wanted to dive deep into the original 1999, a classic that is nevertheless sort of overshadowed by Prince's world-beating follow-up, Purple Rain. And what better way to give 1999 its due than by ranking and discussing every song one by one. Before we get started, I'm curious about both of your previous opinions on 1999. I know we're all big Prince fans, but is this one of your favorites? And do you kind of agree with me that it's like, it always feels like kind of in the shadow of Purple Rain for some reason?
It does feel like it's in the shadow of Purple Rain. Because that record is so, monumental. It's like hard not to be. But I love 1999. I think this is maybe my favorite Prince record. Depending on the day of the week you ask me. I think usually I would say this record.
Yeah, arguably 1999, the song itself was maybe one of the first Prince songs that I had ever, known about. Yep. You know what I mean?
Same.
As far as the record goes, I kind of came to it after Purple Rain, obviously, and just kind of like what you mentioned, Gabe, it kind of always felt like it was just not, at least, over the history of listening to it, it always felt like not a good enough, Purple Rain. So,
yeah, I want to, dive into that more for sure. But for me, it was like, it feels like this thing that I've never been able to fully get into. I do like it. And I honestly got to say that this album needed a remaster more than any other Prince album. It's quite murky. It's quite dense and pretty strange at points. And I just almost found it unbearable, how thin and shitty the original master sounded. So, I've listened to it plenty, but I feel like I've spent my whole life waiting for this to get remastered. So this is a pretty, my first real moment to try to make it click. And, we'll come back to how well I did. But like I said, we're going to rank every song. We always get into pretty deep minutia when we do this. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's start with number 11, the worst song, according to Dan, on 1999.
You always phrase it that way, and I always go first, and so you make me look like the dickhead. The least good song on 1999, I put Free. It's one of the 2 ballads on here. I think it's the worst of the 2. The concept is a little cheesy. It's sort of patriotic, he's literally talking about being able to live your free life and stuff. It's just a little cheesy. It sort of feels like it doesn't fit the theme of the rest of the record super well.
I totally agree. Actually, I want to ask though, so you would say you like this, but just not as much as the others, or do you dislike this song? Because I kind of dislike it.
I kind of dislike it in the context of 1999, but I think if it was on another record or a single, or if this was one of those vault tracks, I would be oh yeah, it's not a bad song. It's not a bad song. Yeah. I don't hate it, but I definitely, it is the only song in this record that I would say that I sort of lean towards wishing it wasn't there.
It's actually my number 11 as well. Is it yours, Darren, by chance?
It's my number 10, so close enough.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So we can try to hash it out. It is bizarre, I think. I basically just can't understand its function, in the album. It seems to not fit the theme. We'll get into this plenty, but this apocalyptic kind of sci-fi, reckless abandon thing that's going on here. It's a very sincere, patriotic song, it seems. And it almost seems to evoke the national anthem a little bit with that low guitar line. And I think of Jimi Hendrix's national anthem, right? Yet when he was doing it, it was there's something ironic about it.
It was a little
because,
subversive,
Yeah, Vietnam is ripping the country apart, and he's literally shredding the, the anthem to bits. This is totally sincere, I mean, would it be too much to say? Like, it reminds me of, those shitty sellout country songs that are just like really nationalistic.
Well, it reminds me of this song that's like, "Am I stand up next to you?" And
Lee Greenwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, I was thinking sort of the same thing earlier today when I was, going over my final, checking it twice, with my naughty list or whatever. It's festive. We're in the Christmas season. And I was thinking that, like, if he had just gone like a little more obvious that it's patriotic, like it would be like that Lee Greenwood song, or that Toby Keith will put a boot in your ass song or something. It's like he at least like pulls back a little. There's like, it's thinly veiled enough where you can like, it's not in your face America, but it's close enough.
Yeah, it's just like weird because like right in the middle of the Reagan era, it seems like he's feeling pretty pessimistic about things throughout the rest of this album, but all of a sudden it's like very optimistic here and like very nationalistic. I just don't get it. It's also weird that the instrumentation is completely traditional. It's like the only song where that's the case. I mean, you have more thoughts on this, Darren?
No, I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you guys are saying. Like, this was actually one of the songs that I was like probably least familiar with, just from not like having listened to this song in particular.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it actually started off a little bit higher on my list because I love a good Prince ballad, right? I was kind of already like sucked into that, but then after like repeated listens, I was like, oh my god, this really is like incredibly patriotic. It sounds like that Lee Greenwood kind of thing I was just describing. And so it just started dropping. I bet like a couple more days, it probably would be like number 11 for me.
If it was about something else, do you think you would like the song more?
I'm actually more upset about like the instrumentation. Like the way it sounds so patriotic is really more bothersome to me than like him singing about being glad that you're free and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he's not explicitly saying like, God bless the USA or something like that. If he went that far, I'd have a problem. But it's really the instrumentation, I feel like, is just very jarring compared to like the rest of the album.
Yeah. I think I'll have a little more to say about it when we get to the other ballad, because I feel like this works in kind of a different way. But your number 11 is, Darren?
It's Something in the Water. Does not compute.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
we
could disregard Darren. Yeah, we could disregard Darren's opinion here.
Oh my god.
Jesus.
Okay, why? Worse than free. What the? Okay, go on.
Everyone's shutting this podcast off.
Right. Keep listening, please. Keep listening. It gets better. I just felt like this was like the least like interesting song on the album. It actually, repeated listens like kind of kept coming back, and like listening to this over and over again to like try to understand why am I just not really liking it. And I guess I'm just kind of like, and it's interesting because it's actually shorter than a lot of these other songs that kind of like jam and go on for a while.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm actually like sort of bored in this song, and it's kind of crazy, but like maybe it's just, the beat and the instrumentation is just really not like that. It's just not that interesting to me, I guess. Prince's like vocals are like, seem very like murky on this track more so than like even the other ones. I don't know. It didn't really like go anywhere for me. So at least like with Free, I felt like I was a bit of a sucker for the ballad from Prince. So that's kind of why that sort of won out between the two of those songs, but just not a big fan of this one. Man,
I wonder, Dan, is this like quite a bit later for you?
Yeah. We won't be talking about this one for a while.
All right, same with me. So let's maybe save our thoughts on this one. Goddamn. Like I said, 11 for me. The objective number 11 on this album is Free. So now we're moving into number 10. Dan, what's your number 10?
Yeah, number 10. And I want to say, basically from this point forward, I love all these songs. I love all these songs. This was honestly a really hard list to make. Like I really kind of struggled with it. But number 10 for me is Automatic.
Okay, it's my number 9.
Okay, it's my number 9 as well.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
I like it. It's like a weird, like sort of like if Kraftwerk was a funk band, like the AUTO-matic thing. Like that's really catchy too. It keeps getting stuck in my head. But overall, I think it's like lyrically a little weak because it is just a lot of that like repetition, and even the songs sort of repetitive. But I mean, it's still great. It's just like it's more of that there's 9 songs that are more great, I think is why it's my number 10.
Yeah, for me, it's really quite strange. It's the longest song here, and it's like, it's very robotic. It's very, very Kraftwerk. I think it's almost not even funk. It's almost like just a pure kind of like synth pop, new wave kind of a thing.
That's fair.
And it's like, it's just strange because it's almost consciously stiff. And I think that's sort of a theme on a few other songs here. But there's something interesting about the way that the Revolution, the singers, they always sing like a bit deadpan, a bit, robotic themselves, I've always felt. And it's really used to its best effect here. I also think that it's repetitive, but I don't know, if you kind of dig into it, it really has quite a lot going on within this like very repetitive beat. I love like when the synths kind of like get sustained and everything, and it's like building intention. His monologue is absolutely insane, and I think lyrically the song is pretty fascinating because it's like sort of about an addiction to a woman who like kind of mistreats him, but then it starts to like shift and you realize it's kind of a masochistic relationship where he likes to be tortured, and then they start getting it on, I guess, and the woman is like moaning / weeping. It just gets
weird,
bonkers. Completely fucking bonkers. And you almost think of it like a club track. Like it has the style of like a 12-inch kind of extended mix, and then you think like, who would dance to this shit? You'd be like losing your mind if you're on any kind of drugs or something, and the girl's like weeping, having sex. I don't know, what do you make of it, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree like what you guys are saying. Wasn't I feel like, and I'll try to get into this a bit more as we get later on in the list, but like, some of these Prince songs, especially on this album, kind of how it precedes Purple Rain, like it has like a very established like sound of the 80s that like, Prince was probably like at the, forefront of all of this, but like in my mind, looking back, it's like this sounds so much like the 80s. But then there are certain Prince songs where it's like, Prince is in a league of his own. Like it's beyond the reach of anybody else that came after him. You know what I mean?
I can understand.
This is not really one of those songs. You know what I'm saying?
I can understand that. It's like sometimes, when you see a movie and like that movie invented a cliche, but you came to it later. So like The Matrix with that like bullet time thing. Like, I came to that like way after that movie actually came out. And so like it had already become a cliche. And so it's like sort of like hard to get past that. And I could see where like the 80s-ness of like some of these songs could bother you if you weren't already like into like, I got a real soft spot for like popular 80s music, so like I like those sort of sounds, but I can see like how it could do that to you.
But there's definitely Prince songs that kind of elevate to the point where like it no longer feels cliche. Yeah, it's like kind of timeless, I guess is the the corniest way to describe it.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. I do get that not all the songs like transcend their time period, but I think this is kind of the crux of this album, like the weirdest thing about this album. And it's not unique to this album, but when something is trying to sound futuristic, it inevitably gets old, and then it sounds like weird. It sounds dated. Like Kraftwerk must have sounded like the most cutting edge thing ever now, or back then, but when we listen now, it's got this strange like retro
futurist
amateurism to it. You watch like Blade Runner, right? It doesn't look like the future, it looks like the 80s.
Yeah, it's like
there's
the
something
future
like
very, in the 80s.
Yeah. And there's something like very like fundamentally weird about that I think this album is kind of circling around. So I think we'll sort of return to this, I'm sure, many times. But in the meantime, Darren, your number 10, you already revealed, correct?
Yes, because it was free. Yep.
Oh yeah. Just wanted to make fun of you one more time. My number 10 is a DMSR. Is that nearby for you guys?
No, not.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
I'm a little shocked.
Time to make fun of Gabe.
Okay.
Yeah, what the hell?
Well, here's my argument. Okay, it's extremely funky. Okay, this is kind of like it's got this cool, it's using synths like James Brown uses horns or something. I'm always fascinated, Prince likes to do this where the drums, especially on this album, the drums are like quite stuttery, like they're layered on top of each other almost, and they're not like quite hitting at the same time. And
it's got like a reverb to it, right? So it just sounds yeah.
But it's like the echo is like just as loud as the original hit, And it makes like a weird, this whole record has like this nervous energy to it. And by kind of doing that like trademark Prince rhythm guitar thing in the pocket, it makes that kind of stiff, jittery thing like very, very funky. So I'll admit that. My issue with this song is that, so first off, just on a fundamental level, I think that what's that dude's name? Bruno Mars like ripped this shit off for Uptown Funk,
Oh yeah.
That beat. Yeah. And it makes it like sound a little lame to me. And I know that's not fair, that's not Prince's fault, but it also kind of works like a live showstopper. It feels like it almost doesn't even it just doesn't work on record the way it will work live. And in fact, there's a live disc at the end of this box set where that's the closing song. And, it's a great time. You could totally imagine being there and how fun it would be. And yet it's got this kind of like wedding music thing that I can't shake because, it's like, hey, clap here, repeat after me. It's like chanty and like, slide to the left, slide to the right. It's like, it's one of those songs, and it sounds like Uptown Funk, the like supreme wedding song of our generation. Doesn't it just feel like time has not been kind to this track?
Well, I disagree, and I guess I'll hold on to it because it's quite a bit later for me.
I do want to shout out when he specifically explains to the white people when to clap because otherwise they wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, so we'll have a little more to say about that one. Then we are on to Dan, your number 9.
Yeah, my number 9, the other ballad here, International Lover. Again,
whoa.
I got that quite a bit later.
Really?
To be honest.
I mean, again, I like this song, but it's just it's a little bit out of place because it's more like the traditional arrangement, instruments, whatever, and then. It's a good closer because it's like we've got like all this energy and everything, and it's taking it down. We're getting out of here, but I think in the context of the record, it's a little weaker. I don't really need another ballad. Like I really wish that this was just the only. Let's just get rid of Free. Put this there, and then we're good to go. But I don't love this track.
I think I want to save my thoughts. Are you on that same page, Darren?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's quite a bit later for me, but I do want to ask though, based on what you were saying, something weird happens with this album, and I wonder if you guys have a problem with it, in that we hit Free, and it's like completely off the topic that the album has basically been on the entire time so far, which is this like reckless abandon, let's dance like the world's ending. We'll have more to say about that. You get to Lady Cabdriver, and you're like, okay, I can kind of see, maybe he's like, he's talking about he's like, there's trouble in his life and blah. So maybe there's a little bit of that, but he's basically like having sex with this like cab driver and stuff. All the critics love you in New York, international, like the last 4 songs just basically don't even feel like they have anything to do with the theme. It feels like by the time we get to International Lover, the theme is completely gone. I mean, is that a problem for you guys?
I mean, I do sort of agree. I mean, at least like Lady Cabdriver does sort of have like a little bit of this reckless. I mean, he is like banging a cab driver, like. There's like at least some recklessness there,
but it feels like a stretch when you're trying to justify.
Yeah, you are.
And then
like, it sort of loses like a lot of the rest of the record, and not the entire record, but a good deal of it has like this sort of like futuristic, computer sort of thing in it, and that is completely lost, after Free. I think there's no more of that going on at all. Not even in the not in the lyrics or really too much like in the actual like sound of the record.
Yeah. And just like thematically, like International Lover doesn't even feel like it's trying to, like even the biggest Prince stan can't make it fit the theme. You know what I'm saying, Darren?
Yeah, I guess I haven't really, I don't know. By the time I get to like All the Critics Love You in New York and even like International Lover, I don't know. Maybe it's just like, it just happens, but like I kind of forget about the theme, you know what I mean? I feel like it slowly kind of like disappears rather than like abruptly doing it. I just feel like the first 4 or 5 songs I think are pretty clear where they're going, but then even like Automatic, Something in the Water, like I'm already kind of like not thinking about it so much after that, and then it just, those last 2 tracks feel like quintessential Prince, you know what I mean? And I'll kind of get into that, but
yeah, it does kind of ease you out of it, I guess is a good point. Okay, your number 9, Darren, I believe we already heard.
Yes, it was Automatic.
Okay, anything to add there?
Nope. No, I talked about it.
All right, my number 9, also Automatic, which I said plenty about. Dan, you're number 8.
Yeah, number 8 for me, Lady Cabdriver.
Man, criminal that you put this so low.
I mean, again, like we just sort of talked about this, but so I'll keep brief. But it's another one that like sort of very only loosely can fit the theme of the record. Also, the end of it. I mean, call me a prude, but it gets a little much for me with and it's not really the end, it's just sort of like the end of the lyrics, the whole like when he, I guess, is like banging somebody and he's like, this is for this and that, and
see, that's the thing that I can kind of like, I just can't tell if I'm being like a stan, but I can kind of force it to make sense, because it's like he's kind of like fucking his frustrations out of this girl or something.
I understand it, it's just like it makes me a little uncomfortable.
And that's kind of a theme of the record, where it's like sex is like a manifestation of his anxiety, like his political anxiety almost. So it's got a little bit of that. But I will. Yeah, I'll have more to say about it later.
I will say I can appreciate him being frustrated and not being tall.
Yeah, there's that.
Felt that one.
Yeah, some of his complaints are like not as big of a deal as some of the other ones. I don't know if he's talking about like Disney World. I don't know if the lines are too long or what.
That's an odd thing to bring up
compared to the Cold War
and Yosemite
like
Sam
proliferation and stuff. Yeah, doesn't like that. Okay, so your number 8, Darren.
This one might be controversial. I picked Delirious for number
That's
8.
my number 8 as well.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
It's actually my number 7. So
okay.
Interesting.
So I mean, it's a fun track. Very like reminiscent of other like kind of fun, upbeat Prince tracks. And I think upon like early listens, it's like a kind of immediate like earworm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But just after like more and more listens, like it kind of dropped down on my list. And I love this song. I mean, pretty much everything we're going to be talking about from here on out, like you guys mentioned, we love the songs. But compared to the other ones, I feel like I definitely want to get to a song where I feel like I can talk about this. But Prince has such a fascinating way of like, obviously sex is like such a very popular theme amongst a lot of his songs, but the way he sort of like almost makes you feel like you're having sex, you know what I mean? Like the way he kind of delivers things makes some of the later songs I'm going to talk about just that much better. And again, like Delirious is just not one of those. Like it's a fun song.
You don't think so? Because I'm always struck by like it feels like the drums are too fast, somehow. I guess because they're kind of jerky and everything. And it's so fitting for the idea of, feeling delirious. Mm-hmm. The synth line is like kind of like bendy and loopy.
Yeah, I love that synth, that woo noise.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
great.
actually often I'm amazed that like Prince's songs are not cornier than they are, because a lot of times like the music is so directly related to the theme of the song. You know what I mean? Like I need a delirious synth line here. I don't know how he pulls that off.
No, I know it is like surprising, like because you're exactly right. He really like hits it on the nose a lot of times. But yeah, I mean this song, it's the 3rd single from 1999, and it feels like it. It's like it's sort of like we're still trying to get like another hit out of it, and it just sort of feels like the lesser hit from Little Red Corvette 1999, which were smashes. I just looked, like Delirious only made it to number 8 on the chart, Hot 100, which I mean is still great, but the other ones were number 1 and stuff. It has a little bit of that sort of stepchild feel to it.
Yeah, I mean, tell me if I'm way off base here, but Delirious like really reminds me of kind of a Bruce Springsteen song, like that self-conscious old-time rock and roll kind of thing. And it reminds me of Free a little bit, which is also kind of a Springsteen move, like a, patriotic, nationalistic, maybe a little twisted, like not directly endorsing Reagan, but maybe like kind of capitalizing on the nationalistic mood in the 80s and stuff. And, you know, I just feel like Prince, and of course we're like 2 years away from Born in the USA by Springsteen, which would be like one of the biggest records of the decade. It feels like Prince kind of has his finger on the pulse a little bit. And am I wrong to be a little cynical and say that he was like, you know what, I better add like a, you know, patriotic anthem to this record because it's like, it'll be big. And I better add like an old time rock and roll song to this record because that's popular right now, you know?
Yeah, you know, see, I don't know how much, especially like this sort of early in Prince's career, you know, I don't know how much like sway the record label had, because I did read, I did a little reading on the record, and I like the title track, like 1999, like they asked him to like include a song that like sort of summed up the scope of like what the theme of this record, and then it's 1999. So, you know, like they obviously had like some sort of sway. So, yeah, I mean, you could be right. Maybe they said, you know, we could use a rock
or
track
not,
or, you know, a little.
Maybe not that they said, you know, but just like I often feel like, and this is kind of true throughout Prince's career, but I feel like he sometimes like sits down at his piano and is like, I'm going to write a blank song, you know? I'm going to write a rock song today, you know, or I'm going to write a soul song, or I'm going to write, and there he's got like a self-consciousness of genre that is often very, very cool. And I think it's cool here in Delirious, but it feels a little bit like a almost paint by numbers of, you know, it's like, what if I combined Springsteen and Devo? They're both really cool right now, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
and I think it's fitting that it's like the third track on the record. You know what I mean? Like notably after the two mega hit singles too. You know what I mean? Like it feels like it's almost deliberate, and it's. Like, imagine it anywhere else on the album. Like, if it was later on, I feel like it would not
that's true.
Work. You know what I mean?
It is weird that the singles are in order, like track listing wise.
It is.
You know, it's very like 90s, right?
Yeah. I want to talk more about the sequencing actually, because I think it's a little strange, but it like also works. But let's see, where the heck are we then? Number 8. That was your number 8, Darren?
Yes. Yep. That was my number 8.
So it's also my number 8, and now we're on to Dan's number 7.
That was my number 7.
Jeez. Okay.
Darren,
you're number 7.
All right. So number 7 for
I'm
me.
delirious.
Hey.
Yeah. Number 7 for me is Let's Pretend We're Married.
Okay. All right.
Oh my God.
There's only a few more tracks on it.
Darren.
Oh my.
I see you. We're going worst to best. You got it back.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Look, it's a great track. I just, you know, I honestly feel like the songs that are higher up on the list, I feel like are just a little bit better. You know what I mean? I don't really have like any like particular like complaints about the song. It's fun, you know, it's upbeat. It's much better than, even though it's like close to Delirious on this list, I feel like it's a lot better than Delirious, I feel like, to me. You know what I mean? It's kind of more along the lines of like what I like thematically, you know, I feel like it's incredibly earwormy, like just always stuck in my head, that whole like sha sha cuckoo, that whole thing. It's just, you know, I don't even know how you come up with a line like that, but it is it's
another
incredible.
Great line.
Yes.
I sincerely want to fuck the taste out of your mouth.
I like that. And then what, like 3 lines later or something, it's like, I follow God. He's the only way. Or something. I love that. I love that so much.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to save my thought. This is going to be a long podcast because our lists are so different that we're all saving our thoughts. I don't suppose it's close for you, Dan?
Nah, it's pretty far. I'll wait. It'll be closer to yours, I'm sure.
Okay. All right. Then I'll have more to say for sure. My number 7, this might be controversial, Little Red Corvette.
That's my number 6.
Okay.
Shocking.
Okay. Well, you know, I think this suffers a little bit from I've heard it too much, which is weird because I've definitely heard 1999 more, and that hasn't suffered at all to me. But it's kind of like a simple rock song. I understand why it was Prince's breakthrough single. Actually, I don't understand that because he has some like absolute fucking bangers on previous albums, but I understand why this one was a hit at least. It's, you know, it's interesting because it's got a simplicity to it. It's got sort of like a prettiness to it. I love the soloing and everything. I actually wanted to mention there's this thing in the it's like the last track of the last Vault disc, which is like a little demo that he put together, I guess, of a medley of songs. Lady Cabdriver, I Want to Be Your Lover, Head, and Little Red Corvette. And it was like for his touring band to sort of learn the medley or something. And so there's just an instrumental Little Red Corvette where he's just like kind of soloing on like an organ sounding synth. And it's like instrumentally, it's just like fucking way better, I think, than the original song. I mean, like, if you haven't listened to this, you got to check it out. But there's like a sweetness buried behind a very self-consciously crafted like MTV hit, I almost feel like.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of my problem with it. And I agree. Like, I do sort of wonder if it is just fatigue that makes me put this a little lower, because I feel like I hear this song way more than 1999. But yeah, I mean, I basically agree with you. It's just, I see why it was a huge hit. It feels like a huge hit. That's sort of like kind of wears thin and it doesn't hold up quite as well as like the rest of the record. But I mean, there's no denying that like this is like is a banger. Like I'm never mad when this comes on the radio or anything. It's just there's songs on here I'd rather hear. That Darren I'll put at the bottom of his list.
Right. I've got a couple questions. Why does this song sound so bad, quality wise? Like, his vocals are distorting, and it's weird because the backing vocals are very clear.
I was thinking about that last night actually, because his vocals and even sort of maybe the whole song. I drove kind of far yesterday, and I listened to this album like the whole time I was driving, and it made me think like the song's Little Red Corvette. It's about like a sports car, and I thought like maybe like on the vocals and maybe even the music, there's like a slight compression, and I think like maybe it's trying to emulate like the sound, like when you see like a movie about the 50s or something, it's always like that driving around listening to the radio, and it's always got that like compressed like 50s radio kind of AM like sort of sound to it. So I was wondering like maybe it's that, like it's intentional, but then it's so sort of like kind of subtle that I don't know if that's correct, or I'm just thinking up crap in the car.
That's spoken like a true stan, I think.
I mean, maybe.
The other thing I wanted to ask is, how do the lyrics of this song hit you in 2019? It's like possibly problematic, but maybe Prince can just get away with anything. But he's basically having a one-night stand with this girl, maybe the most legendary one-night stand in rock and roll history, and he's, telling her like, you got to stop doing this, that you're going to ruin your life. You got to stop living so fast, and you're going to fuck yourself up emotionally. Like a little, I don't know, slut-shamey or something. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I think you said it. Like Prince just sort of like, because a lot of like the sex stuff is, I mean, even the Lady Cabdriver, like the end of that, like I feel like a lot of other people would not get away with that today. But it's just like, Prince is just this like weird like sexual being or something that like just sort of transcends anything like that, and as far as I know, he doesn't have any like real allegations. It's all like in song. I've never heard anything like, and I could be wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, in this case,
he also doesn't come across as like being overly like masculine, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's another thing. Yeah, he's not like he's never been like a tough guy or something. Like he's pretty.
Like, I mean, I would say. That's all true in general, but I just mean like the message of this song specifically is like he's having a one night stand with a girl who is also having a one night stand, and he's like telling her, being a little preachy, like you got to stop doing this. It's really bad for you.
Yeah.
I feel like he can kind of get away with it. It's like actually a theme that he does in a lot of his songs, and you don't really feel like he means it, like he's most of his songs are about, hey, have fun, like strip down to your underwear right here and dance and have sex with whoever you want and stuff. So it feels like it's not his MO to shame somebody, and maybe it's genuine that he met somebody or something, or could have met somebody that was kind of being reckless with their emotions or body or whatever. I just thought it was kind of kind of interesting. Interesting listening experience. Not something I'd thought about until, we were listening this week. All right. So we are on what number? I have no idea.
My number 6, but it was Little Red Corvette. So
okay. Darren's number 6 then.
My number 6 is Lady Cabdriver.
Okay.
Which both of you guys already talked about? Or
yeah.
No, I haven't.
I have, yeah.
Just Dan. Okay, yeah. I mean, this song is just a jam. It is like such a jam. Not one that I can jam out with the kids in the car, unfortunately. A little too much moaning going on about halfway through. But just a real like jam, like funky song that regardless of like the lyrical themes or whatever, like you could just listen to and enjoy over and over again. You know what I mean? Like it is like the second longest song on the album.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And unlike Automatic, like I find myself like constantly kind of wanting to come back to this. Just that little melody, like Lady Cabdriver, like just over and over and over again. So great. You know what I mean? And Prince, just lay it on me. Go on for however long you want. Make the women moan all you want. Like, I'm there. I'm there for it.
I mean, unlike something like Automatic or DMSR, this track has so much like, so many dynamics to it where it like stops, it slows down. There's like drum fills. There's, blasts of synth followed by like shredding guitar. It just builds and grows and evolves.
It earns the time limit for sure.
It really does. Yeah. And it's just like, it's like a jam, but not the kind of jam where like, all right, let's just ride this beat and play with it. It really feels composed, and it's, I think, absolutely awesome. It's probably the funkiest thing here. I mean, that bass line is fucking unbelievable. It's like the finest rhythm guitar workout on the whole thing, I think. The falsetto I mentioned, the synth line just keeps getting funkier and funkier, like every couple minutes. And, I have like this massive funk and disco playlist that I play like anytime I'm, hanging out with people. And this has been a staple for many years, and it just never quits. I'll save my number, but it is definitely one of my favorite Prince songs, period. So number 6 for me then is Something in the Water Does Not Compute. Are we any closer to yours, Dan?
I mean, we're closer, but it's a couple away. I'll go ahead and talk about it, but I'll do what you did. I'll save the number.
Okay. I mean, this is the point where I want to kind of mention how forward-thinking I think this album is. If you listen to this track, the instrumental would basically be like an ambient techno masterpiece, and it's made in 1982. I just honestly cannot believe it. And I think that this is another thing, referring back to what you were saying, Darren, where, how do you listen to this album? Do you try to get in the headspace of what it must have sounded like then? Because these sounds must have been brand new to so many people. I think it's important to remember that, the things he's drawing from, like house music, techno, hip hop, that kind of stuff, is like, it's not going to hit the mainstream for like another decade. You know what I mean? I mean, it existed. I don't think he's inventing these styles necessarily, but they must have been so underground that everybody who bought this album, like almost everybody,
they'd be
had
completely
never
alien.
Yeah. So, do you try to imagine like what this must have sounded like, or is that just a fool's errand?
I think it's a bit of a fool's errand, because you'll never like. It's nice to think about, and I think you should, at least if you're trying to like get into basically any album. You should always sort of think about the context, but I mean, I think ultimately you should just, how do you enjoy it today? Because there's plenty of records that I'm sure were fantastic when they came out, or groundbreaking, and then now they sound like completely cheesy and corny, and nobody cares anymore. And it doesn't make it good now that it's not. That's the definition of classic. Is timeless and stuff. So I think it's a fool's errand. What about you, Darren?
I mean, I didn't really come to the song, thinking
I mean, not
about
just this
that,
song, but this album, right? You can that it must have sounded futuristic as hell when it came out.
Right. And I think that, it's a testament that, like, I feel like when I listen to it, I'm not, like, too drawn to the fact that, like, oh, this is the 80s. It sounds like the 80s, you know what I mean? And we talked about this, like, some of the songs kind of transcend that, but, like, for songs like this, for instance, where to me it sounds pretty dated, like I do have to like feel like, all right, let me try to think about this in the 80s. It must have been like groundbreaking to hear something like that, but it doesn't necessarily make me personally like enjoy it anymore, just more like appreciate it. You know what I mean?
I just remember that Darren put this as the last song.
I think that's crazy because it's the most like avant-garde thing here. I think it's a thing that still sounds futuristic, you know, more than almost any other track here. It's, you know, it's just bizarre. It's another crazy example of like, I mean, so first off, I was trying, you know, to just imagine what must this have sounded like, and like, you know, nobody had like a computer, you know, and he's talking about like being a computer, you know, like that does not compute. Like, what a weird way to respond to a girl who's turned you down, you know, that must have been. And that's kind of what he's doing. And it fits the dystopian vibe of the first like 2/3 of this record. It fits, you know, there's a lot of this like human but not human thing going on where like things are said robotically. Instruments are sort of stiff on purpose, I think. That's like all here. And I just, you know, think about like, I mean, there must have been hundreds of thousands of people who had never heard a drum machine before this album.
Well, and I imagine, you know, it's 1982 and he's, you know, the album is called 1999. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, imagine 1999 where there's like flying cars and all this kind of like wild stuff. You know what I mean? How accurate he ended up being with a lot of this music is, you know, right. Shocking. And I also wanted to mention that, you know, I was about to say it, but like, it's another example of those, you know, where it should be corny because he's like, you know, the sound is basically like a computer malfunctioning, like does not compute, you know, it's like, why isn't that corny? Just because it's Prince, you know? But I mean, what did you want to add about this, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think Prince is just like the coolest person ever, and so even when he does something that should be corny, it's like still pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, a lot of like what you said is why I have it so high, and you know, like you said, like it, you know, it sort of like evokes like ambient techno or something that, you know, that really doesn't come into popularity for at least a decade, you know, maybe even a little bit more and all. And you know, I mean, I love electronic music and all that, so I appreciate that of it. It's like so sort of like dark too, you know. It's like sort of a dark song.
It's got an interesting like, you know, texture to it because those pads are really. There's just something about those chords it's quite unique on this album, I think. Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I think I like this song for sort of the reasons Darren dislikes it. You know, I really like. I think it's a like Lynn drum, like LN1 drum machine on this record and stuff, and like. I don't know. I just like it is like you know, an outdated like machine and everything, but it just has like this cool sound that I really enjoy. Like you said, I love those pads in it. It is just a fantastic song. And also, is there a greater opening line than "Some people tell me I got great legs"?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess, you know, just to sum it up, I just feel like this is the one track that still sounds so alien, you know, in a way that I imagine it must have sounded back then. So we're on to your number 5, Dan.
My number 5, yeah, okay. That is DMSR, Dance Music Sex Romance.
That's my number 5.
Oh, there you go.
All right, what? Justify yourselves. You heard my complaint.
Yeah, this this is one, you know, it really surprises me that you don't like this song more. It's just like so fun. Like, you know, you complain that like it's one of those things that sort of seems really fun live, but you know, you lose that a little bit in record. And I'm sure it's even more fun live, of course. But I mean, I think it's still pretty goddamn fun. Like on record, you know, like you sort of like compared it to, you know, those wedding songs and everything. But like, if I was at a wedding and they played this, I'd be pretty stoked. You might get me on the dance floor, you know, for once or something. And then it's 8 minutes and 17 seconds long. It's the third longest track, but only by literal seconds. And it just like feels like it could go on forever, but not in like an annoying, like the song's dragging kind of way, like in a jam bandy kind of way, or even like a krautrock, like just it's so like you know, like pulsing or moving forward that it's hard to like see an end for it, you know. And I just think that is like sort of like this one fits the theme a lot, like with 1999, like the title track. It's about this like partying, like recklessly, like before the world ends, or something. And like this song is like, sort of like we're still at that party that started at the beginning of the song, and it shows no signs of stopping or anything, Yeah, and
this is a good example I wanted to add of why you can forgive the sentiments of Little Red Corvette, because he encourages the ladies in the audience to work your body like a whore. So I guess he's perfectly fine with it. It's just the Little Red Corvette girl that he's worried about. Why did you put it so high, Derek?
I mean, this song is like, it is, a statement, right? It is, it's
like
dance, music.
His mantra.
It's exactly what it is. And having that come in at like the fifth song of the album, I feel like is just so perfect. It's obviously it jams. It's an incredibly like jammy track, right? I can imagine like Prince on stage just like walking around to different instruments as he does, and just ripping a crazy drum solo and then a guitar solo. Just it's just kind of one of those tracks that you can imagine like drawing out for a long time. But even on this record, I love it so much because it's like it defines Prince. You know what I mean? Like if there's plenty of like amazing Prince songs, and this isn't like obviously my favorite, but like, if you wanted to like convey a message to somebody of like kind of what Prince and the Revolution like were intending to do, I feel like this song is kind of like at least one of the first ones you would start with. You know what I mean? Like it kind of just dance, music, sex, romance. That's it, and all the darkness in between, like all of the stuff in between that.
I really agree with you. Yeah, I think that is perfect. It is like it's Prince's mission statement.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I feel that it lacks melody. It's really quite chanty and quite repetitive, quite long. And I mentioned that funk playlist of mine, and it's seriously like 30 something hours of music, and I've dug through so much sort of late 70s, early 80s funk, and there are a lot of songs like this where it feels like a little bit like forcing the listener to have a good time. It lacks the hook that's actually gonna grab you, and it's just sort of like shouting something like, dance, jump around, move around. And I always find those like they fall a little flat for me. I also wanted to ask you guys at this point about the sequencing of this record. I mean, what do you think about, we basically get all of the huge like 12-inch kind of extended mixes. Usually artists would release an extended mix for the club because you don't want it to end, and you don't want it to change too much either. For some reason, Prince decided to basically just put those type mixes on the record and put 3 of them in a row. Let's Pretend We're Married, DMSR, and Automatic, back to back to back, long, repetitive club tracks. What do you guys make of that?
I'll say I think that you got to remember this is 1982, and it's like just a problem with technology. You there's no way to like really arrange this onto 2 discs, 4 sides, like without having those sort of in the way they are. Like you're just limited by time. Whereas now you could put them anywhere you wanted. But I just sort of eyeballing it would be. I mean, you could switch like Automatic and Lady Cabdriver, or DMSR and Let's Get Married or something. But it would. Or any of those, around, but they sort of like can't be.
Well, whether his hand was forced or not, I mean, listening to it now, how do you feel about that like long stretch of huge?
I honestly
tracks?
Sort of like it, because like if you think of this record as like the theme of this like never ending party or whatever, it like sort of feels like that. You've got 3 tracks back to back to back that are like these sort of ongoing, never-ending feeling kind of things. I think it works well to the theme, and I don't mind it, because like once you're in that sort of like, that's sort of the jam section of this record, and once you're in the jam, you kind of want to stay there. You don't want to jam. Have a slow song, go back to jam. I sort of like to stick around. I mean, it kind of comes. That gets messed up a little bit with Something in the Water and Free and Lady Cabdriver being switched around, but
I mean, I feel like it elevates the LP, like the form, the platform of the LP, and I really I've always appreciated the fact that like Prince was willing to obviously make a radio edit of a song like 1999, but still keep the integrity, the original idea for the album. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of just that sort of concept is completely gone like these days. You know what I mean? So having these longer songs here, having them all like drawn out and stuff, like I'm all for it. You know what I mean? I'm like so into it because like as a lover of albums in general, like, when something's good, you kind of just want more and more of it. You know what I mean? It's surprising because I kind of don't view this album as like a double album. You know what I mean? Just because of how lengthy it is, I suppose, but like 11 tracks, like and it's Prince, like he keeps things interesting. We've talked about a couple of tracks that, maybe things aren't as dynamic or whatever, but I mean, ultimately I'm jamming to pretty much all of these songs. I'm not waiting for them to end or eager for them to end. You know what I'm saying? So I can totally see why you would want to stick, let it go as long as it needs to go,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's thematically relevant in a way where it's kind of like setting up, the mission statement being like, let's party till we drop dead, basically, or till the world ends. And then we do enter like a straight up, back to back to back, just dancing kind of a vibe. But it's maybe trying, and this is like the number one criticism I see like on places like Rate Your Music, where people get a little tired, I think, of this stretch. We are on to, actually, your number 5, Darren, was DMSR?
Yes.
Okay. All right. My number 5 is All the Critics Love You in New York.
All right.
That's my number 4.
Okay. I don't suppose this is anywhere near here for you, Dan?
Nope.
Okay. I'm aware that it's one of Dan's favorite Prince tracks, but this is another one where instrumentally, it's basically just a straight up amazing house track. And again, 1982, house is like just coming into being at this point, I think. And I have sort of a theory, some music theorists will get mad at me or something, but this is a simplification, but it's kind of interesting how you can sort of watch, like, basically you start with, I don't know, something like gospel or something, and it sort of transforms into soul, and it gets secular. That sort of transforms into funk, basically like there are these flashpoints, like James Brown is kind of like the point where that crossover happens. Funk starts to turn into disco, maybe that's like, I don't know, I guess it'd be hard to say, Diana Ross or something, or like Michael Jackson even. And then, disco starts to turn into house, which diverges off into like hip hop, off into techno. And so I would say that, all that stuff is swirling right in here. And I would identify 1999, the album, as a major flashpoint for that moment, and it's all right here. And All the Critics Love You in New York, because it's like it's very funky, but it's very house. It's almost got like a post-punk kind of bass line. You can imagine like LCD Sound System really digging this track specifically.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's just like a complete, banger. And again, I like to imagine, there must have been kids all over the place who are basically hearing house for the first time via this track. And it's like a great introduction,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's, I'll save the number, but I'll go ahead and mostly talk about it because I pretty much, the reasons I picked it are kind of what you said. Just those things are a little more like important to me, I guess. The song, it's got this weird like darkness to it. It like, I always like sort of feel like it's like a really like pop suicide song or something, like it's
okay.
It's like it has like this like a cleaned up suicide to me.
He means the band Suicide, by the way, not like Prince. Actually,
killing yourself. I'm just a big fan of. But no, I mean, those are the reasons I love this track. Is because it's bringing these like elements of house and maybe post punk, all these like weird things that in 1982 are like so alien to your average listener. I've always thought like the one of the things that fascinates me the most about Prince is that like he is so famous, like think of like his lyrics and these weird things he's doing. Like your grandma knows who Prince is, anyone listening, like your grandma knows who Prince is, and she shouldn't know that. It's like a weird thing, he seems like the sort of artist that should be like sort of an underground gem or something, but it's just like he's just so actually like good that it transcends
right.
that, you know?
Yeah. Another thing I actually wanted to add is, in contrast with DSMR, which we were just talking about, or DMSR, which sort of lacks melody. All the Critics Love You in New York has this absolutely pure pop melody, on that hook, like, oh, the critic love you, and it's like got this thumping, repetitive house beat. And then when that little melody comes in, it's just such pure, like, blast of pop that I feel like this is a great synthesis of those two vibes, like the minimalist, the repetitive, the jam kind of thing, and the pop. Like just a much better example than DMSR. But why is it? You said it's your number 4, Darren?
Yeah, and I mean, I obviously agree with pretty much everything you guys are saying. I guess personally for me, I love an artist like Prince who tries something a little bit different. You know what I mean? Like, he very easily could have thrown in some sort of like wild guitar solo, right? Or some, some essential like Prince screaming and stuff.
Right.
To make the decision to kind of do something a little more like low key, at least vocally, and kind of let the music sort of shine here, and the beat and the house, all the stuff that you guys were mentioning. I mean, it's obviously that's a mark of a genius, right? Like, just to kind of know when is the right time to sort of refrain, and like for somebody like Prince to refrain, which he hardly ever does, makes this kind of like a real gem on an album like this,
Yeah, I'm actually always amazed by that with Prince, because it's like any track he wanted, he could just lay like a wicked guitar solo. Right, but even a track like DMSR or something that, in my opinion, could have used like more of a guitar solo. He rolls back. He does like a couple bars, but then like the drums do some breaks and stuff. Like, he's always kind of he's got so much talent that he's always withholding a little bit.
Well, it's like shocking to think that like Purple Rain is like in his back pocket in a couple of years. You know what I mean? Like how
right.
It's incredible.
Yeah, not to mention the stuff in the vault that's just getting released for the first time now. All right, Dan, your number 4.
My number 4, Something in the Water Does Not Compute, which we already talked about.
Yeah, one thing I did want to mention, though, that I meant to mention earlier with this song is like, does it ever get a little predictable, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, a little boring that like so many of the songs here end with one of his weird monologues, like this one does. Just, it's like almost like a thing, like where one artist would be like, let me throw a guitar solo here. He's like, I'm going to talk about weird sex for a little bit.
It's just sort of like, it sort of like builds a theme for the record, I feel like. And I mean, they're always like so entertaining that I don't mind hearing another one, like it doesn't get corny or cheesy or annoying or anything. Like, I always sort of look forward to a good weird ass Prince monologue.
Yeah, I don't really mind it at all. I mean, I feel like it's Prince just kind of establishing himself as this, sex god almost. You know what I mean? Like, it's, I don't know. In 1982, maybe it would have been different, but looking back at it now, it's like that's just Prince. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it does. It would
be odd if he wasn't doing something like that.
It like announces him as a star too. Like it's Prince and the revolution. Like it puts him like sort of front and center to like speak to you. Not just there's so many bands or whatever. You've only ever heard the singer sing.
It's true, yeah.
But it really
he becomes that kind of person that like you imagine like millions of women like wanting to have sex with him, because he just seems like something that you can't even imagine how amazing it must be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I like to think of his songs as kind of like characters more so.
Mm-hmm.
They're like I don't know necessarily who Prince is, because I always feel like it's a different character, and it's such an interesting experience to get like a full scale monologue from one of these characters. Like, you just get to know so much more about them, because like I said, I don't feel like the guy in Little Red Corvette is Prince.
No, I agree.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
It doesn't reflect his ideas about sexuality, but to be able to learn more about that person is just a lot of fun. And Darren, we heard your number 4, which was All the Critics Love You in New York, right?
Yes.
So my number 4, speaking of monologues, I think the best one on this album, International Lover.
Oh, yeah.
So I know that Dan put this rather low, and when I first started making the list, I thought I would put it sort of low, but it just kept moving up for me. It's weird because it's got the traditional instrumentation, just like Free, the other ballad here, which makes it a little bit of a standout, but I think you're allowed to stand out a little bit at the end. I think you mentioned this, Dan, but it's like more okay at the end of the album. Yeah. It also has like sort of a self-consciousness that I feel is missing from Free, where it's like very deliberately trying to get in the spirit of like, I don't know, the Delphonics or like the Temptations, or like Teddy Pendergrass or something, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's like doing that in acknowledgement of the silliness of some of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like you guys have to agree with me that this song is sort of funny to Prince, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think he definitely has like some self-awareness,
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, what does he say at the end? Like, thanks for flying on Prince International. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come on.
That is great.
I almost think he's like completely, like supremely self-aware to the point where, like how Purple Rain is kind of a cult movie because it's like so ridiculous,
right.
Yeah, like he must have known, right? It's kind of funny. And I feel like this song like just sums up that part of his personality and his genius. It's like completely hilarious. The monologue is so entertaining, and actually I would strongly recommend, I think it's so much better, the live version at the end of this set. It's like quite a bit longer, and he just, you know how you can kind of feel it, like on record it's a little clamped down, but live he's gonna fucking kill that monologue, and like you said, Darren, like make the entire crowd fall in love with him with the delivery.
Yeah, and so this is my number 3, by the way.
Okay.
I mean, just 1-to-1 comparison with like Free, like ballad to ballad, like this song just blows it out of the water. Just
I do agree with that. Yeah,
it's got everything. But this is one of the tracks that, in particular, it almost sounds like to me like Prince is like, you know what, I want to write a sex song. Like I want it to sound like sex. You know what I mean? Like I want it to kind of have every element of sex happening musically. You know what I mean? And I'm no music theorist. I can't really like pinpoint exactly how he's doing this, like with different key changes or whatever. But like by the end of the song, like you've reached a musical climax and a sexual climax.
Right.
Like it's all there. I'm actually convinced that Prince, or this character, Gabe, if you will, at the moment of orgasm is letting out that scream. That is, could you imagine? Like that is what I think of when we get to that point in the song, and then like the whole come down, obviously like a plane coming down and all this, like
right.
Just so exhausted for him to just be like, thanks for flying on, you know what I mean? It's brilliant. It's like, it's funny, but it's also like, I'm like right there. I'm like totally like wrapped up in it. In the actual song itself, talking about it is obviously kind of like funny and silly, but it's very, I feel like it's convincing,
Yeah, it's like it's just a great song. I mean, like the pianos are beautiful. The guitar line that comes in toward the end, absolutely beautiful. And, you would think he's like almost ruining it with the silliness, but he delivers it so sincerely that it makes it, I don't know, just absolutely stunning. But like, it's like, Delphonic song, but he's deliberately turning it up to like 11, I mean, I just think that's just so awesome. Okay, so we are on to number 3 for you, Dan.
Yeah, for number 3 for me, Let's Pretend We're Married.
Okay.
Which I can't remember. Did you both talk about that?
I haven't talked about it yet.
Darren, you did.
Darren
right?
did.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it was number 7 for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
so we can have the convo.
This song is just catchy as hell. I think you mentioned this, Darren, like that sort of chorus, like the "oh-wee sha sha cuckoo yeah" thing, whatever.
Yeah,
like that is just like an earworm, like what like masterful songwriting, something like that is, like, even you just making these nonsense words like so catchy and everything. This is just a great song. I wish it was like a bigger single. I think it almost deserves it more than like Delirious or anything.
Yeah.
I think this is just sort of like classic Prince. We said like DMSR is like sort of Prince's, motto or whatever. But this is a song that I would, if somebody wanted, what were some Prince tracks to get into? Like, I think this is like one I would put on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I think it's the 12-inch like kind of jam track working, like firing on all cylinders, unlike Automatic and DMSR, which I'm a little less fond of, but because it's so catchy. It's like those synth blasts, the way that, like the instrumentation kind of drops out for a second, those blasts come in here and there. It like adds so much dynamics to this. The instrumentally, it's got that quality that I was talking about earlier, where it's like it's basically a house or techno track, and it just almost feels like he's just trying to invent some sort of new language of dance or something, like faster, and he's accidentally stumbling on techno, basically, because, we talked about in our previous podcast, Manuel Gotching's E2, E4, which is generally considered like the invention of techno. And this is 2 years before that. And he's like right on the verge of it. And yet it's as catchy as any pop song there is, especially with that, ooey cuckoo yeah thing. And like, I also want to highlight the theme. This is another track where like the theme is just it adds so much to the track, because in light of this reckless abandon thing, dancing like until the world ends, the idea of like pretending we're married, it's almost like, let's pretend we have stability, but we're actually just, completely untethered and just having like wild one night stands and, fucking ourselves up emotionally, because who cares? Like the world's going to blow up anyway because, of the Cold War and all this shit. But, just the idea of like pretending like we're married and then, ending up somehow on fucking the taste out of her mouth. It's just like the most amazing, you know what I'm saying? Like thematically, I think this is like maybe the most interesting song on the record.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It is strange. It's like I've sort of like kind of always thought about it too. Like Prince is like trying to get a lady, in the bedroom, and she's like, oh, I don't do those kind of things. And he's like, oh, well, we'll pretend we're married. That would make it okay.
Yeah.
Like he says, like, it would make it all right or whatever. And I like, if you're free for the next couple of hours. But then if you're not busy for 7 years, like it's such a weird, like, what does that even?
I know. And then, it's just like because I like the, ooey cuckoo yeah thing. It's almost like a kumbaya sort of a thing, because then he says like all the hippies sing. And it's almost like he's just making fun of idealism, because it's like, it's impossible in 1982 to feel idealistic about the state of the world at all, or feel hopeful in any way. And all we can really do is just like pretend for tonight that we have like a happy marriage. I just think it's absolutely amazing thematically, this song. Darren, we're on to your number 3.
Number 3 was International Lover. So yeah, I talked about it. Yep.
All right. So my number 3, I already talked about it, but it's Lady Cabdriver. Again, add this. If you have a funk playlist, add this shit to it. It's just going to kill every time, unless you got kids in the car or something like that. Dan, your number 2.
My number 2, and this is sort of a tough pick between 1 and 2 here, but I went number 2. All the Critics Love You in New York, which is is maybe, if you just told me to say my favorite Prince song, and I wasn't looking at it in the context of a record or themes or anything, just like one I enjoy the most, it would probably be this one. We pretty much already talked about why, but it incorporates a lot of stuff I really enjoy in music. It's just like a fantastic song. So yeah, it's maybe my favorite Prince song.
Just to be clear, your favorite Prince song of all time is the second best song on the album.
Well, that's what I said. Like, I'm
okay. No, makes perfect sense. I got it.
Just in the context of the record.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Darren, you're number 2.
Number 2 for me is 1999.
Ooh, I thought my number 2 as well.
Oh, I thought we were all gonna. I should have switched them. Redo the podcast.
Yep. So I mean, I mentioned this at the top. Like, this was probably like the first Prince song I can remember specifically, maybe besides like when Doves Cry, right? And just as an opening track, like the function it serves of just introducing this sort of apocalyptic sort of dance party or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really brings to mind, for me personally, a lot of the things that were going on around 1999, the actual year 1999, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
The kind of anxieties and the worries, and like to think that he was just sort of foreseeing this in 1982 is just unbelievable. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I probably, when I was younger, I had thought that he wrote this in 1999. Like he had written specifically around there, you know what I mean?
I remember
I think the song came back out, right? I think it got remixed or something.
Yeah,
I remember
he re-recorded it. He re-recorded it.
That's what it is.
This is when he was he was basically pulling a Taylor Swift before Taylor Swift, where he said, I'm going to re-record my entire discography so it doesn't belong to Warner Brothers. And he released 1999 and claims to have recorded his entire Warner Brothers discography, but no tracks have ever emerged. So he was either full of shit, or these future box sets, will get second versions of his entire discography. Who knows?
Well, one crazy thing about it re-entering the charts, this song has actually been on the charts in 3 separate decades on the Hot 100, because when it originally came out in 1999, and then it hit the charts again when he died. So it's 3 decades.
Wow.
It's been on the charts.
Yeah, it's like it's weird because it would be his signature song, like if Purple Rain didn't exist, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like his other signature song. I mean, it's hard to even think of like what to say about it because it's an absolute masterpiece. I feel like it's one of those things where no matter how many times I've heard it, when it starts, I'm just there for it completely.
Yeah.
It's awesome because it's the best example on this record, which like really runs through this record, of like a pretty stiff, almost mechanical, beat, but so much like funk in the pockets of that beat. It's so interesting because it captures that almost like dystopian robotic sci-fi thing he's going for, but it's such a like funk slapper at the same time. It also really gets into this thing that's so important through most of this record of like sex as an outlet for like larger anxieties, which is such an interesting topic. We've talked about this actually before, I think, where I've always thought it was weird how there are a lot of pop songs that are about, like, I don't know, trying to convince somebody to dance with you or like sleep with you because nothing matters.
Yeah.
We're all going to die. Britney Spears dancing till the world ends, or like a Pitbull song or whatever that's like, might not have tomorrow. It's like, and those sound so pedestrian compared to this because it just feels so genuinely reckless in like a rock and roll spirit kind of way, like genuinely doesn't care about anything but fucking himself up. And yet the song is so fun. I mean, I just don't even know how he pulls it off. I don't know how he pulls off like, the synths. It just almost sounds like, Blade Runner soundtrack mixed with, James Brown or something. I mean, it's a stunning song.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically why I had to put it as number one, I mean, it just, in the context of this record, like, it is the reason I think there even is a theme for it. Otherwise I feel like sort of everything would just be kind of loosely connected. And then, like this odd like creation of this subgenre of like ending the world while dancing type of thing. Like what a thing. I mean, it's 30 something years later, and it's still those songs are still coming out and everything. It's just an amazing track. And then, I mean, so weird too, like that like toddler voice he does at the end. That
part is like the coolest part of the song.
No,
why does everybody have a bomb?
It's so rad. Like again, that like we've talked about all throughout this podcast. Like, it's something that I feel like if anyone else did, it would be really cheesy. Like, if you just say on paper, like, oh, at the end of the song, the person makes their voice sound like a toddler, and they say, why does everybody have a bomb? I'd be like, that sounds like some Anani bullshit, and it sucks. But it's great. It's like you said, it's like the coolest. Like, I like to listen to this whole song, like, because I like hearing that little part, at the end and stuff. Like,
yeah.
Well, one particular thing that I find like incredibly rad, and this gets a little granular, but it makes me think of like Paul McCartney. We just recently talked about this on the Abbey Road pod, where we talked about how Paul he mentioned something on one of the demos or whatever. He's like, you got to keep your best bits till the very end, blah blah blah. And then I think of like that moment in I Want to Hold Your Hand when there's like the change to the minor chord, like at the very end. Like I listened to the whole song just to get to that moment. This song has that too, when the 1999 Don't You Want to Go or whatever happens on the half beat, like right at the end. Like, oh my god, just that moment, just the whole song before it was already like a 10 out of 10 incredible, like legendary song, and then he manages to fit one more thing at the end, and I'm just like, this is genius. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of stuff that like makes a song timeless. Like, you always want to listen to it because like that part right there, like you got to get to that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and let me also strongly shout out once again the live version that comes on this set. It's like 10 and a half minutes long, and it just like, cause you know how it gets weird, like on that Why Does Everybody Have a Bomb part, where like it's almost like monotone, it's like the bass is like playing the same note or whatever, and it just like rocks that for like a long time, and it's very like minimalist and very strange, but like incredibly awesome. Okay, so we have gone through. Did we hear your number one, Darren?
No.
Wow. No. All right, what is it?
It's Little Red Corvette. I guess I'm going to have to defend this.
Yeah.
I just surprised. Forgot that you didn't even mention that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, this song, to me, first off, I just feel like it's kind of like a perfect pop song. It's like one of those pop songs that I just feel like is pretty much perfect from the beginning to the end. Like musically, it has another one of those moments, like I just mentioned with 1999, where like the Lit Red Corvette, ooh, like right at the end, that little extra little bit there after like an amazing song. It's incredible because it seems so subtle and not insignificant, but I don't know, the way you can elevate an already amazing song again at the very end just makes it, again, a song that I'm just like, yeah, if it's on, I'm listening to it every single time. If I'm going to recommend a Prince song to you, it's probably going to be Little Red Corvette. Like it'll be one of maybe 2 or 3 other songs that I'm like, yep, this is one you got to listen to. It's a staple. I have never tired of it. You guys kind of mentioned that. It was one of my favorite Prince songs when I really got into Prince, and it has always been just a favorite. And I felt a little like, it felt bad almost, like, because I was like, well, this has got to be number one, but it's a mainstream hit. It's got all that, it's overplayed, yada yada. I don't know. For me, it's just a perfect song. I love it. I'll never get tired of it.
Yeah, I guess I said my piece on it, but I do think it's pretty awesome that it was like the first, the video, I guess, was the first black artist to be played on MTV. I mean, MTV was very new, but, it's interesting to think that Thriller was on its way pretty soon, and MTV was basically designed to be like kind of a rock thing. And, it's just amazing, like black music took over, and that this song, because it's like in the rock world, but it draws you into Prince's larger world, I mean, I think that's historically, it's very, very significant and very, very cool. My number one, I also already talked about this one plenty. Let's Pretend We're Married. As I was talking about 1999 just now, I was kind of like wondering if maybe I should have put that at number one, but we talked about why Let's Pretend We're Married is just, it's like a long banger, but one that stays incredibly catchy the entire time, and a really forward-thinking masterpiece. And with that, we have gone through the whole album. I want to kind of wrap up by asking, as you were listening this week, did you have any new thoughts about the album as a whole? I'm wondering, in light of thinking that this is always overshadowed by Purple Rain, maybe even Sign of the Times, how do you feel it stacks up against those records? Do you feel like it deserves more credit? I
mean, like I said at the beginning, I think this is probably my favorite Prince record. So obviously, I think it's better than Purple Rain and Sign of the Times. I just like this record, like Purple Rain, like feels like the breakout hit. I mean, a fantastic record and everything. But this one just like, there's the little hidden gems you get. You also get like the two of the biggest singles ever. You get like a little bit of everything you want. And because of that, I just think that it is like unparalleled. I don't know. I've always loved this record, since I got into Prince, and I immensely enjoyed, like getting back into it. It had been quite a while since I had listened to it and stuff, so it was really enjoyable. I don't know if I enjoy it any more than I always have, but it was great to get back into.
I think I enjoyed it a lot more than I had ever done before, largely because I think I would often kind of jump over to Purple Rain or whatever if I started, if I was getting into a Prince kick or whatever. But I think it's really telling that, like, at least me personally, I didn't feel like I needed to rely on Purple Rain to talk about 1999 this entire time. You know what I mean?
True.
Like, it was very easy to just stay focused on this album, and I think that's a testament to really how great it is. I mean, I think it stands up next to it. I mean, Purple Rain still, to me, is the best Prince record, but this is definitely one that, if you're getting into Prince or anything like that, like, you would never want to miss. I mean, this doesn't deserve to actually be in Purple Rain's shadow. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and we didn't save ourselves a ton of time to talk about the larger box set, but as I was listening through some of the stuff in the vault, I found it pretty interesting that he was really fixated on making these kind of jams, like these kind of house influenced, really forward thinking sort of jams on this record. There are a lot of these bonus tracks that are of a similar ilk, and it feels like he completely abandons that for Purple Rain. You know what I mean? Like that's not even a presence there. It's all extremely tight pop songs, really more like Little Red Corvette,
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that kind of interesting? Like it's almost like, if you think about it, he comes out, in mainstream consciousness with 1999 with this sound, and then almost completely abandons it for the next record. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, he makes a mention on this record somewhere that, like, he doesn't care about, like, being played on the radio or, like, hits or anything like that. So you almost imagine that the next record would be, like, longer tracks, maybe fewer tracks that are all just, like, long jams, and he kind of goes totally in reverse and instead creates songs that are on the radio, which is, fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, completely. It's a brave thing to do, to switch up, after you become popular for a sound, to then switch that sound up. I mean, it obviously worked in his favor and made him much more famous, but that doesn't typically work.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's like almost a testament to him that it was like a reinvention, and yet it made it even bigger. We talked about a lot of the other questions I had jotted down here, so maybe we can talk about the remaster and the bonus stuff. I mean, one question I have is, like, why is this record so murky? Do you feel like it's an artistic choice? Do you feel like it's just limitations of these early synthesizers and drum machines? Do you even agree with me that it's very murky?
I do agree with you, and this was, I think we've talked about it before, but like that was always sort of a problem with Prince, and why we've always been excited for all these like remasters, because his whole like early discography sort of has this like murky thing, and I'm not sure why, because there's plenty of other things from this time period that don't really sound that bad. There's probably more that do, but so I don't know if it was just like, was that the style of the time? Is it some sort of limitation? Is it just like, how like the Beatles, like the like stereo mixes are like really sort of bad originally, and it was because like that was sort of a novelty and a tool that people didn't really know how to use yet. So I do sort of wonder, like, the drum machine is fairly new and stuff at this point. Was it just like people didn't really know the best way to record them, or what? I honestly don't know enough about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I wonder, even similar to like the Beatles, like if they were thinking about how the audience was going to be consuming this music. You know what I mean? Like, people back in the 60s with the Beatles didn't have really nice headphones, I imagine.
That's true.
Like, they were going to be listening kind of standing next to large speakers, and maybe that's similar to kind of Prince's approach as well. Like, this is like club music, and maybe it sounded fine coming out of like, a thumping like club speaker or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like one of the greatest mysteries for me. Like, you listen to something like, I'm trying to think of something random, like, I don't know, Zeppelin 4. Sounds like a million times clearer than this record. Like, completely bizarre. I don't know if it's, I mean, it must have been weird, right? That like systems probably weren't built to handle like the bass of an 808 or something at the time. But I don't know. It's very baffling. Do you guys think it adds to the character of this record, or is it kind of like a flaw of this record?
I think it's always been sort of like a little bit of a flaw with this record and kind of Prince's like entire discography. I think this remaster sounds quite a bit better, and I think we're better off in the world for that. There's it's sort of infrequent that like a remaster of a old classic record, especially one that I like already love, like kind of takes the place of what I listen to all the time. I feel like they're either usually so subtle that it's like I don't really care, which one I have. I can't really tell unless I'm paying attention, or it's something like the Beatles where it fixes kind of like a problem that was there. But this is one that I definitely will change, and in fact, I'm like very glad on like Spotify. So often when there's like a super deluxe or something, they only put like the remaster in the super deluxe, and then when you got it saved, you got 6 hours of things saved when you really only want.
Yeah,
but
true.
on Spotify, they didn't do that. They switched the original, like just the album. It's switched to the remaster, so you got that on its own, or you got the deluxe. So thank you, Spotify, if you're listening.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like this master was totally necessary. It's a dance record, and the bass needed to be there, and it just absolutely wasn't before. Sounds like you're pleased as well with the remaster, Darren.
Oh yeah, for sure. And in fact, I feel like it elevates the record for me in a lot of ways, because this was one that I just often did not like to listen to, largely because of the quality. Yeah,
because I just don't know. Like, I feel like with something like Automatic, it's like the subtleties in the sound that make it worth getting through like the whole 10 minutes, and if it's just like a kind of thin murk, I don't even know how to and that's why I probably never clicked with me before, but there's really a lot, you can't hear those like little guitars in the pocket and stuff like that as well as you can now. How about we've only got a few minutes for this, but the bonus material, anything jump out at you guys?
Yeah, I liked some of the songs. Like, honestly, I don't think there was nothing where I was like, oh man, I wish this had made the record. Right. It was all like good, and I mean, in fact, like it's almost like you could take a bunch of these songs and just make another record, and that record would be great.
Yeah.
I just feel like none of them really like sort of fit the theme, but I did like Irresistible Bitch a lot. Like he's like singing that weird voice. Feel You Up's good.
I love that one.
Money Don't Grow on Trees. Really, just like sort of the first like handful of tracks up to Rearrange like are kind of like a really good EP or something, or a shorter record. But to be honest, like most of the Vault tracks, I don't think I'll like be listening to them all the time or anything. They I was kind of thinking I might make a playlist between these and some of the other ones that have come out, and maybe I'll hit that every now and then. But
yeah, what about you, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get too much time to spend with these, but Feel You Up, I did like that one. I thought Vagina was just kind of very funny. You know what I mean? Like I went into that song thinking it was going to be something extremely, just like sensual and like sexual, and instead it's like him just kind of telling the story with the character named Vagina or whatever. It's just, I don't know, very unexpected. But listening to all these, I was kind of surprised at just how not finished they sounded, but I mean there were like overdubs and like it just seemed like there was a lot of thought put into these, and then for them to just get completely scrapped and never even looked at again is crazy.
Yeah, they don't just feel like demos. They feel like at least a step or two.
Unfinished,
like a step or two above that.
Yeah, I mean, I was also amazed. Like there was a set that came out earlier this year, Originals, where it's like demos he recorded for other artists to record, and he puts like a ton of effort even into the demos. But yeah, a lot of these sound like completely finished tracks. One thing, which I guess is a finished track, even though it's pretty sparse, How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore? It's actually a B-side. I had never heard it, and it's just awesome. And again, I cannot hype this enough. This is like, to me, like the best part of this whole set is the live disc, because you got to listen to How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore on that, where it's basically him at a piano, but like backing vocals come in and stuff. And it's like 7 minutes long, and he just goes fucking crazy. Like he's monologue singing, and it's like, it's just, I mean, I can't even explain it. It's just fucking amazing. Any last thoughts on 1999?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it.
All right. Should we move on to just a couple quick emails?
Yeah.
All right, a reminder, you can email us anything, anytime, popshieldpod@gmail.com. Our first email this week comes from Luke, who writes, I loved your episode on Trout Mask Replica, and it got me thinking about another weird artist I'd call one of my all-time favorites, Shoo Shoo. They're not outsider music by any means, but they have made some pretty weird music over the years, from albums like A Promise and Angel Guts to their batshit covers of songs like Fast Car and Only Girl in the World. Do you have any particularly strong opinions on them?
My wife really loves Shoo Shoo, and so I've listened to a lot of it, and it seems like something that is really up my alley, but I just can never get super into them. The singer Jamie, his voice is kind of always sounds like a weird Dracula or something.
Right.
But my wife and I a couple years ago did go see them perform the music from Twin Peaks live, and that was amazing. That was one of the best shows I've ever been to. Not only was it, obviously I love the soundtrack to Twin Peaks, but they put on a show. It was fantastic. And I did like their record from this year, A Girl with Basket of Fruit, a little bit and stuff. So I'm working my way into them, but I don't absolutely love them.
What about you, Darren?
No. I remember this band coming up a lot when we were in high school, Gabe.
Yeah.
But I never got into them.
Yeah, it was weird. I couldn't get into them back then, but then it was years later that I started to actually really love, records like A Promise and The Air Force. I think they're actually incredibly fucking awesome. And it's weird because I'm not a huge fan, but I always check out the new, whatever the new Shoo Shoo record
same,
is.
yeah.
And it's always a surprise and always pretty cool. All right, so our next... Actually, we got a YouTube comment from Steve, which I really only wanted to read because it might get Darren riled up a little bit. Steve has a question about the Shags. Did their father intend for this music to be avant-garde, or was he just crazy? I don't know if I remember all the backstory well enough. I think I know the answer, but Dan, you're probably qualified to answer.
Yeah, he's definitely just crazy. There was he wasn't like, oh, I've got this, because honestly, if he just had this, I've got this crazy postmodern idea or something, that would cheapen it. He's just fucking nuts. He thought a fortune teller told him that his daughters would form this band that would be very famous, and so he had to fulfill this prophecy and stuff. That's a crazy man.
Well, he could have done a little
right.
better job of teaching them how to play their instruments,
That too.
Yeah, I wondered if you had an opinion on that, Darren. Do you feel do you believe the story? You believe the story, you just think the music is shit?
Yeah, I get it. I do believe the story that he what took them out of school and everything and forced them to play and everything. But
and they don't realize that they suck.
And for the record, Darren said that was not child abuse on our old podcast, which you can listen to that on YouTube.
Perfectly fine with it.
I still think that he should have worked them harder, but it's
yeah.
We could talk
That's
about
Darren's
that
main takeaway from that whole saga.
If you're gonna
I feel we talk
them.
about the Shags as much as we talk about Kanye West.
It's true, yeah. Those are the mascots of the podcast.
They're on similar levels.
The two most important artists to Pop Shield. Okay, finally, we got an email from Felix who asked if we can do a top 10 rap albums ever podcast. I think it's something to consider, but actually when we got this email, it sort of made me start to realize that 10 years ago, I feel like I could have done that. But rap has taken over and evolved and gone in so many crazy directions in the last decade that it almost feels impossible.
Yeah, it's like rap has become like rock, if you said what are the 10 best rock albums ever, that's difficult, because does that include indie rock? Does that include art pop, stuff? And it's sort of become that because yeah, do you include a trap record? I feel like you would, but that's hard. I think anytime you try to do the best of a genre, period, that's a difficult task unless it's a small niche genre. I think, though, we should make an effort to do more rap things because we really haven't done all that much outside of Kanye on this new podcast. So we do need to work it in, but maybe in a different way. I think we should get to some classic stuff, classic hip hop records.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be fun to do Jay-Z now that you poverty Spotify guys can listen to it.
I was thinking the same thing.
You want to do more rap, Darren?
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
All right.
All right, well, I guess that's enough for this week. So what do you think? We'd love to read your thoughts on the air. You can email us, like we said, popshieldpod@gmail.com. Next episode, we're going to be a little delayed because of the holidays. We got some traveling and stuff everybody's doing. But we're going to upload an older discussion of Prince's Purple Rain in 2 weeks as a holdover. But after that, it's going to be our giant end-of-the-year wrap-up. We'll give you our top records of the year. It'll be a big one. We'll make up for missing the one show. So if you like the show, help us out. Subscribe, leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Stay connected. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that junk is at Pop Shield Pod, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
So long.